Hello everyone, thank you for coming to this episode. Unfortunately, there is no video this week because this dumb girl over here, me, forgot to press record the meeting on Zoom. So you'll just have to deal with my voice this week, and we will be back next week with a normal video podcast. Thank you for listening. Hello everyone and welcome back to The Final Chicane with me, Cristinboylan. Hello everyone, welcome back to a new race week review, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix review in Brazil. Only 3 more races left this season. We have Las Vegas coming up next, Qatar, and then Abu Dhabi. That's insane. And Las Vegas, next race is F1 Academy finale. Qatar, we're back with F2 in Qatar. I think I'm right saying that. And then obviously a sprint race weekend as well for Formula 1 mixed in there. So it's coming to a close. And honestly, we're at a position in the championship that I really didn't think that we would be at the start of the season. I thought someone would have had it by now, to be honest. And I'm pretty sure I did think that person would be Oscar, but now it is looking like it might actually go Lando's way. I honestly have no idea. I have put my belief on Oscar winning the championship since the start. So I think I'm going to stick. I can't just change it 3 races to go. But I'm going to stick with Oscar somehow something changing and him pulling out of whatever sort of rut thing that he's in right now. Even though his performances haven't been bad enough to say he's in a rut. It's just that he hasn't been performing as well as he was earlier on in the season. So, I don't know. Lando could do it. It's going to be an exciting last 2 races, no matter what the outcome is. Yeah, we have a bit to talk about, but before all that, let's start with the Final Chicane Brain Game, and we are back to the OG riddle of the week. I chased the checkered flag with fire, though trophies seldom stayed. Now I walk before the engines start, where deals and nerves are made. I speak to kings of speed and stars who wander where they please. A microphone, my steering wheel, I weave through crowds with ease. Who's that? I'm really proud of that one, guys. I'm really proud of that one. Even if it's easy, I'm really proud of it. I'm a poet. I am a poet. And if this F1 thing, career doesn't work out for me, catch me being a poet, doing whatever poets do besides making poems. Exciting news for people who like my interviews. I have another interview coming out next Monday, and that interview is with Tommy Byrne, so another past Irish Formula 1 driver. Tommy Byrne basically is like one of the biggest what ifs in Formula 1 history. He was basically beating Senna at some point. Basically the achievements that Senna had leading up to Formula 1, Tommy Byrne did that exact same thing, but like a year earlier. And he's just a very interesting character, and I really enjoyed that interview, so make sure you don't miss that one. Out next Monday. Media moments from the Brazil Grand Prix. First media moment, oh yes, Charles and Alexandra Somlo got engaged. I was not expecting Charles to be proposing, honestly, like mid-season and everything like that. But that's pretty cute. And did you see like the videos of Charles going around on media day, and he was like walking up to Alex Albon. Too many Alexes gets confusing. And he was like showing his ring, which is like something that you usually do when you get proposed to. You're like showing everyone your ring, but Charles was doing that. I thought it was the cutest thing ever. So he was definitely in high spirits coming into this weekend, but I doubt those lasted with how his weekend actually went. We've got Franco Colapinto officially confirmed for Alpine for 2026. The contract details weren't really released, but it is rumoured that it's a multi-year contract, that it's not just for 2026. I would be a little surprised by that. Yeah, I'm sure Jack Doohan is probably feeling a little sick, a little angry right now, since, you know, they performed similarly in the Alpine, but obviously Jack Doohan got a lot of less time in it. But I'm a big fan of Franco Colapinto, and I think he really does have great talent, but he's just not able to show it. As is anyone really in that Alpine. It was a sprint weekend this weekend, so unsurprisingly there were no real upgrades being brought. Also, coming out to the end of the season, most teams have shifted their aims and everything into development for 2026, which is definitely going to be a very different year. So not much change will be coming for the rest of the season. Zach Brown made some things, gave some clarity to some things. He was asked about, say, if either of the drivers will get preferential treatment going into the last 4 races of the season, obviously this being before Brazil. And he made it clear that, like, even if, Lando pulled ahead or whatever, or it looked like one had more chance of winning than the other, there's going to be no preferential treatment, that he would rather both Lando and Oscar lose, basically, than give one, than be unfair, basically, than give one more of a chance to win than the other, which I completely agree with at this point. I agree with that. But also, like, it would have been ridiculous to say at this point, be like, okay, we're going to prioritise Lando because there's 3 races left and he's winning. Like, it could go any way. Max could still come up and win the championship. So that was obviously the right thing for him to say, and I would have been a bit mind blown if he had said anything else on that matter. Sainz missed out on media day because he was not well. I feel like quite a few drivers are missing out on media day, like, more than usual this year for not being well. I don't know, because I feel like I don't usually say this as much in the past episodes, but this year the drivers do be sick on media day. Borletto's home race as well, which is so sad because of how his weekend went, but it's been a while. It's been a little bit since the Brazilians had, like, a homeboy to cheer on. So it was obviously very special for him to get a race here. Hopefully he will be racing here again next year. But of course, hopefully with a more successful weekend, because that was probably his worst possible outcome that he could have imagined in a race. Like I said, it was a sprint weekend, so we did only have 1 free practice session this weekend, and really, things didn't start off well for Yuki because he did in fact crash in FP1, and his weekend really didn't get much better from there. Sprint qualifying, Ferrari were lacking pace quite early on. We sort of knew that it wasn't going to be a good weekend for Ferrari coming into Brazil, but like, I was hoping for a good weekend because Lewis, I just need him to have the best weekend ever, because I still feel bad about Roscoe, and he's still definitely hurt about Roscoe. And if you don't have a dog, or if you've never formed a connection so deeply with a pet or a dog, then you can't speak on it, okay? Because it's hard losing a dog, especially with how close and how much Lewis loved Roscoe. So I just want Lewis to have such a good weekend, to get on the podium, to dedicate a podium. A win would obviously be even more special to Roscoe, and just to end his Ferrari first year just good or better, because right now it's not looking too good for him. Russell's pace was actually showing quite earlier on. I did think that he would be the strongest Mercedes over the weekend, but Antonelli actually did pull through. I think Russell did have the fastest lap out of all of the first laps at the start of sprint qualifying, just over 110. And I think Max did a 110, 107, so Russell went faster than that in some point. I mean, Yuki was struggling in sprint qualifying as well. I don't know if maybe there was a bit more damage done to his car or what was the story this weekend, but yeah, he was only 14th on his lap, and of course that did eventually put him out, and he was out in P18. Alonso was on it. He did a really great lap, but despite Russell's good performance at the start of SQ1, Norris did finish with the fastest lap with 1:09.627, setting the tone for how the rest of the weekend was going to go for him. We had P20, we had Sainz out, and Ocon as well. To be out in Q1 was definitely a bit more of a disappointment, but it definitely wasn't Ocon's weekend this weekend either, even though the other Haas was doing quite well. The Haas of Behrman, obviously. Q2 again, Alonso was looking strong. Alonso has been looking strong, like stronger than this season. Alonso has been looking really promising recently, and he just needs to sort of Like, I think he could turn it into a really, really great race result. But I think he needs a bit of luck involved as well, because right now, Alonso's performing well, but Behrman's performing well as well, you know. Hadjar's performing well. Liam Lawson performed extremely well this weekend. So maybe his performances are going a bit under disguise because everyone else is also performing well. Q2 did see the start of Charles's rough weekend. He did spin out in the last few seconds, so basically no one else improved on their lap times. Hamilton, he didn't get to complete the lap, so out we had Behrman, Bortoleto, Gasly, Albon and Hamilton. Hamilton was noted for red flag infringement, but nothing came of that. So yeah, at the end of sprint qualifying, Norris got a very, very well-deserved pole. He had a 109.243 pole. This was his first sprint pole, apparently, which I did not even realise. What was his first lap time? His first lap time was... So his fastest time in SQ1 was 109.627 and his fastest time overall was 109.243. That's quite the improvement there. We had Antonelli with an incredible performance to go P2, Piastri P3, Russell, Alonso, Verstappen, Stroll, Leclerc, Hadjar, Hulkenberg. Yeah, I guess an unusual name to see there, Stroll. Stroll had quite a decent sprint quali. His race didn't exactly go like that in the end. And moving on to the sprint, we had Carlos and Yuki starting from the pit lane. The first of both Red Bulls to be starting from the pit lane. At some point that weekend, it was a very difficult strategy, which was clear. No one really knew what strategy to use. It always is a difficult strategy call in Brazil. Great start from Lando, actually. This is something, because remember at the start of the season, Lando was... Honestly, he was bottling all of his starts, basically. But I don't know what has changed. I think something huge has also changed in his mentality. Like, I think he's just so much more calm and focused and hopefully not thinking too much outside of himself, if that makes sense. Because the things that are nothing to do with the... Like, his starts were not to do with the car. Or at least... they wouldn't have changed this drastically. Like, he hasn't had a bad start in quite a while now. So I do think that Lando has figured something out up there. And obviously in his driving as well, of something with the car clicked. I don't know if there was a change made that actually just... he found the setup that he was completely comfortable with. But he has it figured out. And yeah, he had a really, really good start at the sprint. A clean enough turn one, but we did see the yellow flag. Lawson and Behrman came together with Behrman spinning. For the strategies, most did start on mediums, but some did start on softs. We had Norris on mediums, Antonelli on softs, Piastri on mediums, Russell softs, Verstappen softs. And honestly, both tyres worked. It's hard to... I struggle to figure out which strategy ended up being better because I guess whatever tyre you're on, you sort of just made the strategy work in this particular sprint. Sometimes it's a lot easier to tell which strategy was better. Usually, it's a lot easier to tell which strategy was better in the race. Oh, Oscar Piastri. It has to be the most painful thing right now to be an Oscar Piastri ride or die fan. Because having that hope and then seeing it being ripped away little by little. He crashed into the barriers. There was a little discussion about why that basically would have been. The first thing we heard was that Kimi, so Lando obviously leading the race, went onto the curb. He may have got lucky because there was no water. So there was water on the curb, but there was no water on his right side of the car. So he managed to keep it on track. There was no sort of struggle there whatsoever. Then Kimi came onto the radio to tell that Lando had pushed water onto the track. I don't know if that was an intentional move by Lando, but if it was, so smart, and like a round of applause for that. It reminds me of when I'm gonna bring it up. Daniel was dipping his wheel into the dust, the dusty type of dirt. Can't remember which race that was, but to try and... It was Piastri, I think, that was behind him, actually, to try and dirty up the air and his visibility. But yeah, obviously, Oscar then took the curb. It was wet on the curb. He would have, slid water on the track. He was gonzo. He spun out. and he crashed, and that was also followed by Hulk and Colapinto basically doing the same thing with a crash into the barriers. Rain was also just starting a little to dribble at this time, but it wasn't anything severe. So we did have 3 cars out at that point, one of them being the main competitor to Lando Norris for the championship. So I'm sure that was a sigh of relief for Lando and an anguished scream for Piastri. Obviously, Kimi didn't go onto the curb, and you could see that he was thinking ahead. He saw Lando go on the curb, the water come on the track, so he obviously avoided it. But Oscar didn't see Lando do that. Oscar, was he close enough to see the line that Kimi took? I'd say he probably was close enough, but if he actually saw the line that Kimi took, I don't know, or if he just thought that maybe Kimi didn't take the best line and that it was his chance to improve if he took a bit more of the curb, which obviously didn't work out in his favour in the end anyway. Lawson and Behrman were also investigated for their incident. I think that would have been a hard one to choose. Oh, and then the FIA called for a rolling start, which makes no sense. So they started the Grand Prix in more wet conditions with a standing start. They drove around, did a few laps, which obviously would have dried up the track a little. And without it raining further since the start of the Grand Prix, they then went with the rolling start. I didn't understand that at all. I was a bit disappointed. I wanted another standing start. But doesn't matter. Norris boxes onto softs, Kimi onto mediums. George Russell actually making moves at this point. He made quite a move on Kimi. Obviously, with the rolling start, Lando once again did have a good start. Overtaking was hard at Brazil, but we did get our fair share of impressive ones. Like I don't know, a lot of people would like, I guess maybe it's a bit divided on whether people would like more overtakes, even if they're a bit easier overtakes, like they're not that impressive, or less overtakes, but when the overtakes happen, like they're really impressive. Obviously there was a wet line, so overtaking was harder at Brazil than usual because of the conditions, but we did have a few good moves. We had a good battle between Max and Alonso as well. Kimi was closing the gap, so usually Lando would have pulled away at this point, but Kimi was very strong behind him and he was closing the gap, but Lando had the race locked down basically. But Max was the one going fastest. Lap 20 out of 24, Antonelli had got to 0.5 behind Lando. And at this point, it was now Leclerc's turn to fight Alonso. Leclerc was doing well as well. I'm sure Alonso is enjoying it a lot more now that he's back in these sort of battles that you would expect him to be in. He is quite fun to watch. I do enjoy watching Alonso defend. Oh, and then the first devastation of the weekend, the Bortoleto crash. A huge crash as well. That was scary. So it looked bad on TV, but then I saw one angle from like fan recordings who were at the race and it looked bad, and then another angle and it looked insane. I'm actually quite surprised he was okay from that. So I thought maybe he would have been a bit more shaken up by it, but thank God that he was, and he was fit and well to race the next day, luckily, even if the race the next day didn't last too long. And the commentator's curse happened on that because they were showing Bortoleto on the mini screen because obviously he's the home race hero and Crofty was talking about him, and then he just went for an overtake, but as soon as he moved out he just completely lost it, and he was lucky not to, I think it was Alex Albon in the Williams, he was lucky that Alex didn't basically go into him at that point. His car was in the air at point and his car did get completely destroyed, but as we know, it can often be a good sign when the car does get destroyed like that, because the car is taking most of the impact and not the driver. Not always the case, obviously. Still looks scary. But Lando did win the sprint, a very, very well-deserved win, a great win. Lando was pretty much faultless all weekend, in fact. Antonelli P2 and Russell P3, so strong for the Mercedes as well. Then we had qualifying. So qualifying was obviously unfortunate for Bortoleto. I always struggle to say Bortoleto fast. Well, now I can say Bortoleto, but just ignore me if I'm like Bortoleto when I try to speak fast. But it was delayed 5 minutes, And that was very handy for Oscar because there were still repairs going on for his car. But Borletto probably needed another like 10-minute delay to get his car ready, but he just didn't get his car out in the end. So obviously devastating for him and the Brazilian fans who were there to support him. Piastri did get out quite early enough in Q1, but not to a great start. Behrman was on it. This was the point of the weekend where he just switched. He turned on a switch and he went bear mode. And Lawson as well. He was looking good at this point as well. And while Lawson and Behrman were looking good, surprisingly, Max did look like he was struggling a bit. I mean, one of Behrman's earlier lap times was beating, you know, the Ferraris and others on their lap times at those same times. So Behrman was very impressive. Tsunoda, unfortunately, was out. Gasly did do a nice lap. Verstappen was out, so both Red Bulls, surprisingly, were out. So P20 with Borletto, who didn't get out to do any laps. P19 with Yuki, Colapinto, Ocon, and Max. Big surprise was Max being out. Not that affected him, in fact, going on to the weekend. Q2, we had Behrman again topping the timesheets before the final laps, but people did eventually get above him going for the longer ones. Hamilton was out. Hamilton, unfortunately, did not improve enough to get into Q3. He was out and he was just struggling mainly with rear grip throughout that entire qualifying session. So P15, we had Sainz out, Stroll out, Hamilton out, Albon out, and Alonso out. Then Q3 was similar enough results to sprint qualifying. Norris obviously taking pole again with an incredible pole lap, a 109.511. Antonelli, Leclerc. And then Q3, we obviously had Lando getting pole with the 109.511, so slower. So the times weren't obviously as fast as the sprint qualifying times. Antonelli, Leclerc back up there, Piastri, Hadjar, Russell, Lawson doing a good job to get in there as well, Behrman, Gasly and Hulk. So Lando P1 had a 109.511 and then Nico Hulkenberg P10 had a 110.039. So that's an incredibly small gap between the top 10. So that was an exciting qualifying. Then coming to the race, Esteban and Max started from the pit lane. Turns out Max could have started from Mexico and still probably have made the top 3. Max did have a new engine, which of course helped things immensely. He also has an incredible driver driving the new car with the new engine. He also has an incredible driver driving the car with the new engine, which definitely helps. It was drizzling a bit, but the weather actually didn't really play too much of a part as we thought that it might. The mediums were definitely the preferred tyre. It was definitely looking like the mediums would be the preferred tyre going into Sunday. And that is the tyre that Norris started on, but Antonelli did go with softs. We had a few on hards actually, with Verstappen on hards, Ocon on hards. I think Alonso, Tsunoda and Stroll were the others on hards. Once again, a great start from Lando. He pulled away immediately, and then devastation for Borletto because he crashed again, which brought out the safety car. Hamilton didn't have the cleanest first lap. He had a bit of contact with Sainz. He was down to P19 and he did pit to change his front wing. But there was just quite a few other problems going on with the car as well. Max was already up to P16 at this point from starting to the pit lane. He was past his teammate Tsunoda, who did not start from the pit lane, and Ocon was past Tsunoda too at this point, I believe. So it's so hard watching Yuki. It's so hard. I just want him to do well. Gasly had a good start too, actually, very clean start. Definitely a moment to show his actual technique on that one. I mean, the Visa Cash App or Bs were P5 and P6 at this point. So I don't know what they were doing this weekend, especially since they've had their ups and downs in the weekend recently, but whatever they were doing, they definitely need to stick with it because it was just a very impressive weekend overall for them. Then we had lap 6, the Piastri and Kimi contact. Should we talk about this? Okay. I have a hot take, guys. I have a hot take. I don't think Oscar deserved the penalty. I'll say it. Don't think Oscar deserved the penalty. If anything, I would have ruled it off as a first lap incident, or I know it wasn't exactly first lap, it was first lap after safety car. But I think it was a very difficult one, and I'm not going to lie, the commentators were like, oh yeah, that's slap bang penalty, like obviously that's going to be a penalty, he's lucky that it's just 10 seconds. I just didn't agree. And I'm not in the FIA, so I know my opinion isn't professional, very professional, but I just think, right, Oscar did lock up, but two things to note when he locked up was why he locked up. He locked up because he had to slam on the brakes because Kimi had moved over, when realistically Kimi probably shouldn't have, because he would have known Oscar was on his inside. And second of all, even though he did lock up, he didn't lose his line at all. You know, he didn't go into Antonelli after he locked up. He kept his line and Antonelli sort of more went into him. I think Antonelli did have a bit of a part to play, but I wouldn't have penalised Antonelli for it either. I just would have put it as a racing incident, you know. I do know Charles did say that he felt the same way about it, but yeah, Oscar knew, I guess Oscar did know that it would be a risky move going into it, and that basically he would have seriously struggled to get past Kimi if he didn't go for a move as risky as that. But I think that could have been evaluated a bit differently. Like, I get it. I get how it can be seen as Piastri's fault, but I don't know, guys. I don't know. I mean, obviously, it was more severe because Kimi then went into Charles, and Charles ended up DNFing because of that. Maybe if Charles didn't DNF, it would have just been seen as a racing incident. But I will say, actually, Kimi did very well to keep the car going, to keep the car on track after that bit of contact. So he definitely proved his skills a bit there. Verstappen was up to P13 at this point from his pit lane start. And there was the virtual safety car. So yes, Verstappen was 13 at this point, but then he did pit, going down to P18. I believe he may have had a front right puncture, or else a suspected front right puncture caused him to pit. Ocon also pitted around this time. I think he pitted lap 9 just after the restart. Tsunoda and Stroll then had an incident, which Tsunoda went into Stroll and caused Stroll to spin. That was quite a slap bang penalty for Tsunoda, I guess. Obviously it wasn't intentional, but he just lost his way, sort of going for a brave move, which you can't blame him, because what does he actually have to lose? So Tsunoda did get a 10-second penalty for that. He then didn't serve that 10-second penalty right and got another 10-second penalty for that. So deja vu from the other Visa Cash app that did that, in the form of Daniel, when one of the mechanics touched his car and immediately was like, knew what he had done immediately. At this point, Lando was pulling away because Lando was just living his best race, not worrying about any of that. By lap 18, Max was 9th, and some of the pit stops had already happened at this point. We had Hadjar and Gasly pit stopping, boxing at lap 19. Hamilton was given a 5-second penalty for his collision, but Hamilton did retire soon enough. He retired lap 39 anyway, because the car just wasn't doing it, and he probably was holding on to see if there was a red flag or something, so... But there was none, so he didn't really have any other choice about that. Lando pitted lap 31. He went onto softs at this point. And Oscar pitted lap 39 onto softs. He also served his penalty at this point and came out at P8. Both McLaren stops at the same time, I believe, so McLaren did a good job with those stops. Lando pitted again lap 51 onto used softs this time, but he came out behind Piastri in P3, which led Max to be leading the race. Lap 51 out of 71. Max starting from pit lane again, because he's insane. Piastri did need to box again. He boxed lap 52, a good stop, 2.2. He went to P7, and then Max had to box again, which went to P4. So the main battles to look for towards the end were Verstappen versus Antonelli and Piastri versus Russell, but neither got that overtake done. So the race ended with Norris P1, Antonelli P2, and Verstappen P3. Russell with a good performance with P4, Piastri P5, Behrman P6, good performance as well. Lawson finishing ahead of Hadjar then finishing P8, Hulk and Gasly. So not the most usual top 10 as well. We had no Ferraris in there, with both Ferraris retiring. A disappointing weekend for Piastri, but it made stuff interesting for us. Even more so interesting for the next 3 races, because we don't know what's going to happen. Did we see that Daniel was at some Premier League game? I saw that. Obviously, I saw that. Pretty cool, pretty random. Now, Vegas is next week. I'm going to be in Edinburgh during Vegas, okay? And I want to tell you, read out the schedule to you right now. So, in case I'm AWOL on my socials, when I usually would be posting, this is why, okay? I mean, practice 1, 12:30 a.m. Practice 2, 4 a.m. Practice 3, 12:30 a.m. Qualifying 4 a.m. Race 4 a.m. And there's F1 Academy on this weekend. I cannot miss F1 Academy. It is the final weekend and I need to update everyone on that on social media as well. Because there's quite a few people who actually don't watch F1 Academy and just keep up with it through my TikToks, as I'm told. So I feel like I will be letting people down. So I'm going to be trying to get up at 4 a.m. in Edinburgh. It's going to be tough. It is going to be tough. But only 2 more races left after Las Vegas. We got to lock in. What will I make for Las Vegas? I'm going to have to do my research on what people eat in Las Vegas. The most authentic Las Vegas cuisine. Who's excited for my Tommy Byrne interview? I am. Oh, riddle of the week. I'm so sorry. I forgot riddle of the week. Riddle of the week. Who wants to know the answer? The answer is, we'll say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Martin Brundle. I know it was easy, but wasn't that a really good one? Comment about how good of a riddle I did this week, everyone. No race this week, but you still get a podcast episode next Monday, probably 6 a.m. Ireland time. So I'll see you there. If you want to be that, I'm not going to be up at 6 a.m, let's be real. But you can be there if you want. My Latin was horrible during this episode. Probably should have turned that off a while ago. And goodbye.